Okay, John, you had a...
Well, I was just going to say that when it comes time to the vote, I'm going to stick with the Board of Adjustment. I appreciate what Dan said, but as I'm reading this, I come to a different conclusion.
Okay. Go over on this side. Walter?
I would have problems with this if we didn't have so many 50-foot and 53-foot wide lots all over the place. Mm-hmm. If there were every lot out there was 60 and 100 and larger in size, and someone walked in here and wanted to cut this into a 50 and a 60, I'd say I don't think so. It's, you know, it changes the neighborhood, blah blah blah, all those things. It is just creating something that you've already got there. The fact that the owner of this property, or over the years, has had the rules, or that apply to them changed without them either asking for it or wanting it or realizing it would create a problem down the road, I don't see that has anything to do with them. I was having a problem, John, with trying to understand how to go through 1 through 5 and make them fit, because I don't know, maybe I'm not the only one up here that doesn't have P&Z experience, but I certainly don't. But Dan just explained to me how it can be done. So I would make a motion that we reverse the decision of the Board of Adjustment.
I'd second that.
I'll second that.
Okay, Walter made a motion to reverse the decision, seconded by Tom Lamar. Other discussion? Wayne?
It would be nice if you could go back to the various years where they changed the zoning code and they changed the frontage requirements. And even if they realized that the hardships that they would be creating, where they already had lots that were 50 feet, and then changing it to a requirement of 60 feet. This isn't the first time that I've seen this with other instances of folks that have had property for a long time and wanted to do some changes to it, but because the code has changed, it has inhibited the progress and inhibited the ability of them to affect the changes to the property that they really wanted to. As Walter said, if we didn't already have 50-foot lots in this particular subdivision, I would probably have a greater concern about reversing the Board of Adjustment's decision. But I think that the city did create a hardship in that particular development by changing the code and creating a 60-foot frontage requirement from the original 50-foot, of which these were originally platted at. So when I first was looking at this, I really felt like I was going to have to stick with the Board of Adjustment. But through the conversation and discussions that we're having, I have to agree with Walter and Dan.
Art?
Yeah, I think Dan did a good job of describing how the criteria and standards could be looked at from a different perspective and explain away. But I would like to maybe Bill, to comment on number 4 as to whether granting this variance will confer special privilege to the subject property that is denied to other similarly situated properties. Does that mean that by granting or reversing the ruling of the Board of Adjustment, that anybody with a property that was, say, 100 feet or more could then subdivide theirs into 50-foot chunks without any further impediment because of the result of this decision?
If I might,
sure,
that is always the risk of a variance, in that you don't want to grant variances that set additional precedence points that then undermine the application of the code from here on forward. When you're looking at similarly situated properties, you're not talking about just this individual neighborhood, but you're talking about other residential properties in the R3 district across the city as a whole. And if you're granting an individual property owner the right to have a lesser standard than any other property in town, then that is really generally granting them a privilege that nobody else has the benefit from. There may be pre-existing lots that were approved at the time that there was a different standard. So in this neighborhood, you see a large number of them. But they were legally permissible at the time they were issued. They received that entitlement at the time that they were developed or platted, and they are existing, legal nonconforming lots of record, and that they don't meet the lot width, but they were essentially grandfathered in for lack of a better term. So you really do need to look carefully at variances. They're intended to really be a release when strict application of the zoning code standards would almost constitute a regulatory takings where somebody's being denied a reasonable use that everybody else in the same zoning district can have, but there are some very special conditions about this property that denies them that opportunity. In this case, that may or may not be the instance, and I think as staff, we looked at the request. We felt generally that there are some good aspects of what was being requested as far as neighborhood compatibility in that area, but in looking at the criteria, we had a difficult time justifying that this was not, one, what was the hardship, two, how is this not granting or conferring a special privilege, and three, how is this not this request or the request to divide the property in this fashion was being requested by the applicant and was the result of their actions. Now, there certainly are other circumstances, and the council is the body here to review this decision and ultimately make that decision, but those are the items that I think, as staff in reviewing against their criteria, we did struggle with, but this certainly is before the council this evening.
Dan?
Yeah, I think that, I'm in favor of the motion, and I think that the applicant making where the current structure is a 60-foot wide lot, they're in spirit adhering to the current code, but you can only do so much with what you have. That's not going to grow another 10 feet in any way. So I think that they're doing what they can with what they have, and at least making half the proposal fit the current code, while the other half, I guess, would say, for lack of a better, it's grandfathered. It meets the same standard as the other lots in the area.
That brings up an interesting question about grandfathering. How does that affect this, Bill? I just want to bring that up. Dan brought it up.
So our technical term would be illegal nonconforming use or nonconforming lot of record.
Right.
In this case, the property does not have that status because it is fully conforming with its 110 feet of lot frontage.
So there is no grandfather.
So there is no application of that concept to this property. What they're requesting to do is to request a variance to allow something that would be less than the minimum code standard, and so that's the request before the body this evening.
Tom?
Well, behind my making of the second of the motion and supporting of the the motion itself is, right next door there are two 50-foot lots. I would feel fine if the configuration of the proposal was for a 50-foot lot that went all the way to the back. I don't feel like it needs to be, an odd shape or an irregular shape that creates that sort of flag look. I'm happy with the development on a 50-foot lot right in that neighborhood, closer to the street. I'm quite familiar with that neighborhood. I've gone up and down that street many times over the last few decades, and to me, it feels like it would be maintaining that neighborhood, the integrity of that particular neighborhood, by allowing that to take place.
John?
I don't know how you could say that it's going to continue with the feeling of the neighborhood when we have no idea what's going to be put on that. Have not an idea in the world what's going to be put on that. And it appears as though we are discussing a situation where the city council is helping somebody sell a lot under conditions that other people wouldn't like or wouldn't be able to sell a lot. And I have a problem with that. I can't I think the lot could be sold under 2 or 3 other conditions that are perfectly within the rules right now, and the fact that in 1957, the city council decided to change the width of a lot from 50 to 60 feet. The lot was in there at 110 feet. It met all the criteria then. The lot still meets the criteria now, but if we change it and say you can cut off 50 feet, and we have no idea what's going to go there, I don't see how what is going to be keeping the neighborhood the way it is, I don't see how we can say that at all. I don't think we know that.
Walter?
I'm not sure that what's going to go there is pertinent to the discussion. I'm getting an affirmative from the development director.
Whatever is going to happen to the property is going to be within the legal allowable uses underneath the zoning code. So it's really about the variance request and this lot width, and are there special conditions that are unique to this property? Are they placing a hardship upon the property owner that needs relief through the variance action, and is there a special privilege being granted to reduce the lot width standard? That's really those are the relevant, as well as the rest of the criteria.
Yep.
Mr. Mayor, I'd call the question.
Okay, we'll start to roll with Art.
Much as I'd like to, I'm hung up on number 4, so I say no.
Aye.
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 No.
Okay, it passes 4-2. The variance is overturned. So we
Your Honor?
move on, folks.
Was that a vote to call the question? Because you have to vote on that first prior to actually voting on the motion that was on the floor.
Okay.
Good man.
Yes.
Okay, so now we will vote on the motion.
Good catch.
That was
We
a
passed it, one way or the other, we passed it.
I would recommend
Everybody
actually going
understand
back,
that.
voting with a clear understanding of what you're voting on so that it's clear for the record. So if you go back and vote on the
They
motion
was-
that called the question.
Okay, Walter called the question. Does that need to be seconded by somebody? It doesn't.
No.
Okay, right. So we're going to start with John. This is the motion on Walter's calling for the question.
Aye.
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 Okay, now, you want us to have another re-vote on this?
Vote on the original motion as was
We'll
on the floor.
vote on the original motion. One of the interesting things is about half the time we really follow Robert's rules and half the time we don't. So this is one of those instances where we're going. So we'll start with Art.
Nope.
Aye.
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 No.
Okay, still 4-2, and the variance is kicked out, and we'll move on to item number 4.
Your Honor, if you'd like to instruct staff, we will need to draft a new reason statement to record the decision. Staff can prepare
Okay.
that and bring that back for the council's review at your upcoming meeting.
Yeah, and you're going to get those notes from Dan, because he's the one that changed the criteria on it. So it'll be Dan Karskelian's
So
change of criteria.
Can draft the reason statement with reflecting the discussion that Councilor Karskelian provided, and we will bring that board back for the council's review and approval at the March 3rd council meeting.
Okay. All right. Wayne?
I'd just like to make a comment that it's very rarely will I vote against a commission's recommendations. And this is a very difficult one for me to vote on, too. And had these lots not originally been 50 feet, I couldn't have gone for it.